Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Casual Leader Podcast, your weekly dose of real talk for people building real businesses and trying not to lose their sanity along the way. I'm your host, and today we're going somewhere quiet. Not as quiet as in easy, but quiet as in nobody's really talking about this yet. And I think someone really has to. We're going to talk about loneliness. Not the kind where you're physically alone in a room, but the kind where you're surrounded by people all day, in meetings, on Slack, on calls, managing a team, running a company, and you still feel like there's no one that you can talk to. Not really. Not about the stuff that keeps you up at night. And here's what makes this moment different from any other time in history. Now there's also something that will listen at any hour, without judgment, without needing you to explain yourself, without the risk of it thinking less of you. You guessed it, AI. A lot of leaders and founders I know have quietly started having their most honest conversations with chatbot. Not their teams, not their partners, not with their peers or co founders, but with the service. How crazy is that? And I'm not here to shame that. I get it. It's easy and accessible. The closest thing to free therapy, if you ask me. But I think we need to talk about what that actually really means, because I don't think the story here is actually about AI. I think the story is about trust, about the fact that somewhere along the way, the world convinced us that no one could handle the real version of what we're carrying. And now we found something that lets us unload without ever having to test that belief. So let's get into it. Now, I want to go back and start before AI even enters the picture, because loneliness was here first. AI just gave it a more comfortable place to live. So, if you're a founder, a CEO, a team lead, a director, or anyone who carries decisions that affect other people's lives, you already know what I'm about to describe. But maybe you've never heard someone saying it out loud. The higher you go, the fewer people you can actually be honest with. And that's not because people don't care about you. It's because the trust breaks down in very specific structural ways that have nothing to do with whether someone loves you or cares about you or wants to support you. So let's start breaking it down a little bit further. Let's start with your team. The people you work with every day. You care about them. They might even care about you. But there's a power dynamic there that makes real honesty almost impossible. You can't tell your direct reports that you're questioning the entire direction of the company. You can't sit in a team meeting and say, actually, I have no idea if this is going to work or if the company is going to make it. Because the moment you do, something shifts. People start, updating their resumes, their CVs. They lose confidence, not because they're disloyal, but because your certainty is part of that infrastructure that they rely on. So you hold it in, you hold it together. Let's take another example. Your co founder, if you have one. This is the person who should get it, who is in the trenches with you. And sometimes they do, but they're also the person whose reaction you can't really afford to be misread. If you tell your co founder that you're burned out, is that conversation you're actually comfortable talking about and the next steps? If you say you're not sure about the hire, does that become a 2 hour debate you don't have energy for? The stakes of every conversations are just higher because every conversation has an operational consequence. Now, let's talk about your board or your investors. They need reassurance from you, not uncertainty. They need to believe the story you're telling about the trajectory of the business. Showing up to a board meeting and saying, honestly, I'm struggling, isn't vulnerability. It's a risk factor in their eyes. And then there's everyone else, your partner, your wife, husband, your friends from before you actually got in the role, your family, the people who love you, but they don't live in your world. You've tried to explain it before. I know, I've been there. The weight of a decision that could affect 12 or more people's jobs that could affect the whole company and its future. The guilt of letting someone go who maybe trusted in you. The loneliness of being the only person who sees the full picture. And there's this look that crossed their eyes. It's not disinterest. No. They just want to understand. They really do. But they just can't, not fully. And after a few rounds of that, you kind of stop bringing it up or talking about it altogether. Not because you're proud, but because you're tired and no one can really relate. In corporate leadership, for example, there's a version of this that's even more isolating. You're never alone, you're in rooms with people all day, every day, but none of them can know that you're questioning whether you're the right person for the role. None of them can see the gap between the version of you in the meeting and the version of you driving home. The performance is almost constant. You're never really off the stage during those working hours. And the organization treats your confidence as a load bearing. If you waver, then things downstream start to shake. So you learn to hold it in, and eventually, hold it stops feeling like a choice. It just becomes part of who you are. And that's where the problem starts. Because loneliness isn't just about not having someone to talk to, it's about the slow erosion of trust itself. You stop believing anyone could handle what you're carrying. You stop believing honesty is safe. You build a version of yourself that functions perfectly and feels nothing. You start to forget that there's a person underneath it all who is really tired and needs to be known. That's what's already happening before AI even entered the picture. Keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about what happened next. Because into that vacuum where trust used to be, something walked in. And it was available at 2 a.m. And it didn't need the 45 minutes of back and forward before it could actually help. And it didn't look at you differently either after you said the thing that you've been holding in. And you guessed it, your one and only AI chatbots. I want to be honest about this because I think honesty is the only way this conversation is actually useful. AI is genuinely good at certain things in this space. It's patient. It doesn't need you to manage its emotion while it's processing their own. It can help you think through a decision without the social cost of admitting you don't really have the answer. There's no power dynamic, there's no performance that's being required. The risk that it tells someone else what you said, you just open the app and start talking. And when you're running on fumes, that path of least resistance is incredibly appealing. You don't have to ask, is this a good time for you? You don't have to worry about burdening someone else with your problems. You don't owe it anything. It's just there. Look, I've done this. I've sat with hard decisions at midnight and opened Claude or ChatGPT instead of calling someone. Not because I don't have people who care about me, but because the friction of explaining the full situation to another human being felt like way more than I had it in me. And both Claude and ChatGPT were right there, really nice and friendly, just waiting a click away, ready to go, and they didn't need a backstory. And here's the part that kind of needs to be said directly. A lot of us aren't choosing AI because it's the best option. We're choosing it because it's the easiest. It doesn't require us to trust another human being. It doesn't require us to be seen in a moment of vulnerability. It lets us process without any risk that it comes with that real connection. And that's not a technology story, that's a trust story. And we need to be honest about that because the pattern isn't just AI is useful for thinking through problems. The pattern is people are increasingly offloading their most vulnerable thinking to a service. Not the strategic stuff, but the emotional stuff. The should I fire this person? That's not just a business question. It's an identity question. The subtext here is am I failing? And that isn't a metric question. That isn't a business question. Do I even want this anymore? That is, again, a question that's not a strategic one. Emotions are all over that. And AI is absorbing all of that now, right now. This isn't a character flaw. This is what happens when the structures around us and around leadership don't create space for honesty. And when we've spent years internalizing the idea that needing support is a liability. Okay, so here's where I want to get to, because this is the part that most people aren't comfortable saying. We're not just using AI as a convenience, we're using it actually to avoid each other. Have you noticed that? Every time you take a hard question to a chatbot instead of a person, you're reinforcing that belief, the belief that people cannot really hold your truth. And maybe you have evidence of that. I'm sure we all have. Maybe you shared something really real and deep for you once and it got turned against you. Maybe you opened up and it was dismissed or minimized or met with advice that you didn't really ask for. Or even, a blank stare that made you feel even more alone than ever and you wished you didn't say anything to anyone. That's real. I'm not going to dismiss that. We all have one or two of those situations that happen in our lives. But the response to broken trust shouldn't be to leave human relationships behind entirely and just pretend that everything's fine. That's not okay. That's building a more sophisticated version of isolation. It's comfortable isolation, it's productive isolation, but it's still isolation. And there's something specific happening that I really want to name. It's not just about processing emotions. Leaders are now using AIs to draft and email hard conversations instead of having them directly. Using AI to figure out a team dynamic instead of sitting in the room and naming what's actually going on. Using AI to process frustration with the co founder instead of saying, I need to talk to you right now about something. We're getting better at talking about people and worse at talking to them. That line is important. So let me say that again. We're getting better at talking about people and worse at actually talking to them. AI gives you the shape of being heard without the substance. It mirrors your language back and forth. It validates your framing. It never challenges your blind spots the way someone who actually knows you would. Whatever you say, it's right if you want it to be, or wrong if you want that too. It's comfortable, and comfort is not the same thing as connection. The risk just compounds over time. The muscle of real vulnerability just weakens. You get more fluent at communicating with an AI service and less practice at communicating with actual humans. And the loneliness just deepens, even if it feels like you found a solution, because that solution doesn't actually know you. It doesn't remember your story in any real way. It has no stake in your growth whatsoever. It doesn't care if you're okay tomorrow. And it's just been trained to be nice, to be supportive, to keep you on the platform. Because, like all social media apps, like we talked in a previous episode, ChatGPT, Gemini, all the chatbots are businesses too at the end of the day. They're not there for you, not in a supportive way. And here's the deeper identity question that sits underneath all of this. If you can only be fully honest with an AI, what does that tell you about how humans have shaped your relationship with trust? You've built an identity where admitting struggles feels like a structural risk, where being known feels dangerous, where letting someone in costs you something. AI doesn't threaten that identity at all. People do. And so we keep choosing the thing that doesn't ask us to change. And it seems like it accepts us for who we are, which is very dangerous and the biggest lie ever been told. That's a trap. That's actually a real trap. Not that AI is bad, but that it's so comfortable that it lets us avoid the one thing that actually makes loneliness better: learning to trust a real person with the real version of ourselves. So, what do we do about this? Maybe you ask. Because I'm not interested in leaving you with a problem with no path forward. That's not how we do things here. So, let me give you a few things that I think might help and actually matters. Number one, first and foremost, I want you to reframe when you think about AI as a thinking tool, not a feeling tool. Use it exclusively for work, planning, research. Anything that requires feeling, not a place for it. It's brilliant at pressure testing decisions. Look, if you're looking to make a really good decision, pressure test it. That's completely fine. It's great for organizing chaos in your head, for exploring options that maybe you haven't considered. Use it for that. But when you notice yourself processing emotions with it, when you're not solving a problem, but actually seeking comfort or reassurance, someone to tell you that you're right, that's your cue to pause. Not because it's wrong, but because it's kind of fake. It can help you clarify what you're feeling, but it cannot help you feel less alone or actually go to the right conclusion. Those are two very different things. Number two, rebuild trust in small, deliberative ways. You don't need to bare your soul to someone tomorrow. That's not what I'm asking. Start with one honest sentence to a person. Something like, I'm not sure about this decision. Or, this week has been harder than I'm letting on. Or, I don't have the answer to this yet and I'm struggling. Trust isn't rebuilt in grand gestures. It's actually rebuilt in tiny moments where you let someone see you and they don't look away. Find someone safe. Start small. See what happens. Give it a try. Number three, build a real talk circle on purpose. Even two or three people. It doesn't need to be a whole community. Start with two. Start with one. Not necessarily mentors or coaches, but people who carry a very similar weight that can at least a little bit relate. People who know what it feels like to be the one making the calls and living with the consequences. The value here is not advice, the value is being known and being understood. It's the difference between someone saying, have you considered X? And someone saying, yeah, I've been there and it's absolutely terrible. Find the people who can say the second thing. Number four, stop using AI to rehearse conversations you should actually be having with humans. Use AI to prepare, sure, but don't let preparation become a substitute for the real thing. If you've been processing a conflict with your co founder, let's say, through a chatbot for 3 weeks and still haven't said anything to them directly, then AI is not helping you here. It's the only thing that it's doing, it's actually helping you avoid communication. There's a really big difference. Number five, name the loneliness instead of trying to solve it. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is just to say it. This is lonely without immediately looking for a fix. I know it's silly, and as a fixer myself, I always default to an immediate solution. But indulge me in this and take a beat. Usually, AI lets you skip that step. It lets you go straight into action items, productivity, and advice. Don't skip it. Just name it and stay with it. The naming is where the humanity lives. The naming is what reminds you that you're a person, not just a function. Number six, check the pattern. If your most honest conversation this week was with a chatbot, sit with that for a minute. That's not a technical problem. Ask yourself, who in my life could I have said this to? If the answer is no one, the work isn't finding a better AI tool. The work is figuring out why you've built a life where trust is not really possible. And I know that's hard and that's a little bit messy too, but that's the real work. That's why we're here. All right, let's bring it all together. One, leadership loneliness isn't about having people around you, it's about the structural breakdown of trust that happens the higher you go. Your team cannot be really your confidants. Your investors don't want your uncertainty. Your friends outside work can't fully understand the weight. That's not anyone's fault, but it is your reality, and pretending otherwise doesn't really help you. Number two, AI steps into that trust vacuum, and it makes sense that it did. It's available, it's patient, and it doesn't require you to, disclose the deepest, darkest secrets to another human being. But choosing AI, it's easy, but it's not the same as choosing it because it's right. Number three, we're using AI to avoid each other. Have you noticed that? Not just to think through problems, but to sidestep. the discomfort of real human connection. We're rehearsing conversations instead of having them, processing feelings about people instead of actually talking to them, getting more fluent with AI services and less with practicing with people who actually matter. Number four, AI gives you the shape of being heard, but without the substance. Comfort is not the same as connection, and over time, that compounds. Number five, the fix isn't looking for a better AI, it's actually rebuilding trust in small, deliberative ways. One honest sentence, one safe person, one conversation at a time. That's where it starts. And it compounds a lot over time. So here's your challenge this week. And it's a simple one, but it's not an easy one. I know. I know. So think about the last honest thing you told an AI that you haven't told a real person. Not a business problem, but something real. Something about how you're actually doing. Now find one person, just one, and say a version of it out loud. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. It can just be, I'm really tired, or I'm not sure about insert issue here, or this has been way harder than I expected and I'm struggling. See what happens. See how it feels to let someone real actually hold that with you and take it from there. Because the loneliness of leadership, or even in day to day, isn't something that AI can fix. It's something only trust and connection can fix. And trust starts with one small, terrifying, completely human act of just letting someone in. All right, that's it for today. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who maybe needs to hear it too. Maybe a founder who's been quieter than usual, a leader who seems like they have it all together because probably they don't. Someone who might have their most honest conversation with an AI chatbot instead of you. Remember, AI is a tool. Loneliness is common, even more common than you think. And the leaders who actually last aren't the ones who found better tools to cope. They're the ones who stayed human enough to let someone in. Even when it feels inefficient, even when it feels a little bit risky, even when a chatbot could have been easier. Well, as always, if you love or hated this episode, let us know in the comments below. We're here for both. You don't have to chat with an AI anymore. You have us. Let's get the conversation started. And as usual, we're going to link everything that we talked about in the description. And don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss any of the upcoming episodes. We have tons of interesting subjects coming up. And don't forget to also join our community on thecasualleader.com to keep the leadership's vibes going. Until next time, keep being you authentically, lead clearly, build smarter. And remember, everything starts with you. Start casual, keep going, keep growing. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.